What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Got a lot to talk about today, a lot of small topics around the league with the New York Giants specifically. We're going to talk about some of the injury news that has come out with some of the players on the team. Nothing but good news. Now, you could take these words for what you will. You could interpret it the way you want. But it sounds like good news to me with some of the players that the New York Giants are looking to bring back this year. Obviously, Blake Martinez coming off an injury, Daniel Jones. We got some word about both of those individuals today and whether or not they're going to be able to suit up week one along with Sterling Shepard. And we'll have to wait and see, obviously. Right now, it's all speculation. Also, want to touch on the topic about Saquon Barkley. If you guys remember about a month ago, news came out that the New York Giants potentially were looking to trade Saquon Barkley. Well, Joe Schoen came out today and basically said that he was misinterpreted, that it was taken out of context, and kind of backtracked on some of those comments that came out about a month ago when he talked to the press. But we'll dive further into that. He did say that the New York Giants have been getting calls for some of their players, and Saquon Barkley is in fact included in that. Also, wanted to touch on the new rule from around the league, the new overtime rule. I want to give my opinion on that and talk about some of the pros and cons that may come from that. But first, we're going to start with former New York Giant Jabrill Peppers has officially signed on with the New England Patriots. Peppers, of course, was part of the trade for Odell Beckham. He's been here now for, I think it's 3 years. And now the only player remaining from that trade is, of course, Dexter Lawrence. And we'll see how long he's here with the New York Giants. In the end, that trade really didn't work out for either team. Browns didn't really win much with Beckham. Obviously, Beckham had success with the Rams thereafter, but that didn't benefit the Browns after they cut him. And the New York Giants didn't get much out of the players that they've brought in, at least as of now. So it really wasn't a trade that worked out for either team. Peppers now lands on with the New England Patriots. This coming out from Adam Schefter. Former Giant safety Jabrill Peppers reached an agreement on a one-year deal with the New England Patriots per Mike Rice and me. Peppers tore his ACL last season and is expected to be ready for the start of training camp. In terms of the specifics with this deal, I'm not too sure. I don't know how much they're going to give him. It's a one-year deal, though. I would assume it's not going to be a ton of money. Maybe the New York Giants are able to get maybe a sixth, maybe a seventh-round comp pick for it. We'll have to wait and see what the contract specifics are. As of now, I still haven't received word on the Will Hernandez contract either. Both of them are potential late-round comp picks for the 2023 draft. We'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. As far as Peppers goes, Peppers was a good player for the Giants, but obviously suffered, some injuries. Last year had a major injury, and I never thought he was going to be back with the football team unless he was willing to take a major discount. We've seen all the signings that the Giants have made over their, the last 6-7 signings have all basically been league minimum contracts. Now, maybe Peppers signed for that with the Patriots. I would assume he got a little bit more than that, but I think the way that Peppers looks at this, regardless of what the contract ends up being, is he saw an opportunity to be able to showcase his talent with what he feels is a more developed football team, probably a better defense, and obviously a great defensive mind over there with Bill Belichick, and maybe, upgrades his value for the 2023 offseason. I think it's a proven contract for him. Makes a lot of sense for Peppers to go over there with New England. As far as the Giants go, well, now the safety position becomes a need. Obviously, Logan Ryan has left the team. Now Jabrill Peppers will no longer be with the football team. You do have Julian Love and, of course, Xavier McKinney, but expect the New York Giants to draft a safety at least at some point in this year's draft. I know a lot of people are thinking about Kyle Hamilton. I don't necessarily think that that's a lock, that may happen, that they may take a safety in the first round. They could, but look for them to try to address that position at some point in this year's draft. We'll have to wait and see, but best of luck to Jabrill Peppers. I think it's a great situation for him, and I do think it's probably the wisest decision for him in terms of his future contract. He has a good chance to show out there. Now, let's get to some of the updates on some of the other players on the New York Giants. This was good news today. Jordan Renan came out and said this. Some injury news. Linebacker Blake Martinez and wide receiver Sterling Shepard, hopeful. Both will be back by August, per Joe Schoen. Martinez slightly ahead of Shepard in rehab. He was injured much earlier in the season. Giants taking a wait-and-see approach with offensive lineman Nick Gates, per Joe Schoen. Recently, Gates underwent a procedure as he recovers from leg injury, and there is still hope he's ready for training camp. As far as Nick Gates go, I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm still not completely convinced that both Martinez and Shepard will be ready to go by week one. and certainly not 100% convinced that they'll be ready to go by the start of training camp. But we'll see, and hopefully they rehab. Hopefully that they're good to go. Of course, both of them took significant discounts to come back and play with the New York Giants due to the fact that their market was probably going to be limited with the injuries that they sustained. As you see there, Blake Martinez with the knee injury, Sterling Shepard, of course, with the Achilles tear, and both of them have had a ton of injuries throughout their career. Well, not necessarily Martinez, but Shepard has been out, whether it be due to concussions or physical injuries, throughout the majority of his NFL career. So hopefully both of them get out there healthy and are able to help this football team by the start of the year. But that's good news. Obviously, a lot of us worried. Shepard suffered that injury really late into the season that he may not be able to play, say, for the first half of this year's season. Sounds like he will be, but of course, they're hopeful. That doesn't mean that it's set in stone. This was Joe Schoen talking about the Saquon Barkley situation. Like I said, about a month ago, a lot of people ran with this quote. After I talked to you guys at the Combine, but maybe an hour or whatever it was, I called him right away, and he answered. Schoen talking about Saquon Barkley. Schoen told reporters on Monday at the NFL owners meeting, "We've had a great relationship since I've been here. I've got a really good relationship with his agent, and I spoke with him during the Combine too. Ultimately," Schoen says, calls are coming in on Barkley, but the team is not actively looking to move him. And here's what I'll say. I think that whether or not the New York Giants are looking to actively move Barkley, that's the correct response. You don't want it to seem like you're desperate ever to trade a player. It could only potentially hurt your trade value. Now, we'll have to wait and see. That maybe the New York Giants are not looking to trade Saquon Barkley. It's completely possible. We all know he's a guy that has a lot of potential, second overall pick, but of course will be a free agent at the end of this season and was not a guy drafted by Joe Schoen. And it'll depend on his market or whether or not he'll be here long term and his play on the field in 2022 if in fact he completes the season with the Giants, which at least it looks at as of now that he will be starting the year as a New York Giant, and we'll take it from there. One game at a time, one season at a time for Saquon Barkley in a New York Giants uniform. But at least according to Schoen right now, the New York Giants are not actively shopping him. Then he talked about the comments. That was taken a little bit out of context at the Combine, Schoen added. "I have not called one team on Saquon Barkley, okay? Everybody ran with that from the Combine. I said I would listen if people called on any player," which of course he should. You should always listen. "So it would be irresponsible if I didn't. That doesn't mean I'm going to do every deal. So I haven't called one team about Saquon Barkley. I've gotten calls about a few of our players, and he's one where a couple of teams have reached out. But again, I'm not shopping Saquon Barkley. It'd be irresponsible if a team calls. I think 31 other GMs would say the same thing. If someone is going to call and offer you something ridiculous, you're going to listen. It doesn't mean you're going to do any deal or you're going to say yes to it. We've got an offensive head coach, Brian Daboll. He likes to have as many weapons and toys as he possibly can. And that, he's trying to talk, deal from a position of power. If in fact he is looking to potentially eventually trade Saquon Barkley, that is the correct response. Or it's very possible he may not be looking to trade him at all at this point in time. Schoen does a good job there talking about how you always pick up the phone regardless of the player. And as a Giants fan, I love hearing that. It sounds like a smart GM, and we'll see if the Giants are able to trade Saquon Barkley. If they are looking to do that, I don't think they will. I think they will start the season with Barkley on the roster, as I've said all along, and try to potentially up his trade value. I still don't think Saquon Barkley will be in the long-term plans of this football team, but things can change. Who knows what his market will be when he's a free agent in the following season. This coming out from Ralph Vacchiano regarding Daniel Jones. Giants quarterback Daniel Jones, who missed the final 6 games of last season with an unspecified neck injury, should be ready to go when the Giants open the offseason program on Monday, said Giants coach Brian Daboll. Daboll answered several other questions, talked about the offensive line, and said specifically that the New York Giants will look to address the right tackle position in this year's draft. Didn't say it would, would definitely be in the first round, but did say that they would be looking at that as well. I didn't pull up that quote. But Daboll says he should be ready to go. Read that quote the way you want. Some Giants fans read that as, well, that's not definitive. They're not really committing to him. Who knows what this neck injury really is? And some Giants fans read that in a positive light, and they say, well, it sounds like he'll be ready to go. It's a quote. Read it for what you will. My guess would be I do think Daniel Jones will be suiting up for the New York Giants this year. He will be ready to go week 1, of course, if he does not sustain any injuries from within camp. But it sounds encouraging on the fronts of Martinez, Shepard, and Daniel Jones, something that a lot of New York Giants fans are questioning, but nothing's definitive until such time we see him out on the football field. Brian Daboll, speaking at the owners' meeting, said he called Daniel Jones to alert him the Giants were signing Tyrod Taylor. Said we kind of got it set the way we want it right now. meaning Jones is the starter and Taylor is the backup. Also, I saw that, I think it was Jordan Renan said that the feeling that he got from the things that were said today is that it's not even a debate. Daniel Jones will be the starter for the New York Giants, and he's going to get a real opportunity. I think we all know that as Giants fans at this point in time. Taylor was brought in to be the backup, and we'll see how it all plays out. Now I want to talk about the overtime rule. This was something that was kind of debated on Twitter today, and I get it. It's a rule change. A lot of times people don't like change. There's been several rule changes throughout times with the NFL. Some of them work out to be very good. Some of them work out to be really bad. Of course, we all remember the change with the pass interference rule where you could challenge that. That didn't really work out because anytime anybody challenged the pass interference call, they never overruled it because that's kind of left up for interpretation. It's not like when you step out of bounds. This, to me, I think there's some pros and I think there's some cons. First, coming out from Ian Rappaport, then I'll give my full opinion on it. Playing Rule Proposal 1 was amended. Both teams are now guaranteed a possession in overtime, but it's now postseason only. It was approved per source. And, of course, if you remember, it used to be, if you just kicked a field goal in overtime, you would win. It was sudden death. They then changed that, where if you scored a touchdown in overtime, it would effectively end the game. If you scored a field goal or didn't score at all, of course, the other team would get an opportunity to either tie or win the game. Now, regardless of what happens on the first drive, the opposing team will get the football and get an opportunity to match them if they, in fact, do give up a touchdown. The main reason why this probably went into effect, even though reportedly they were not the team that called for this, was the game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. The two teams reportedly that called for the change initially were the Tennessee Titans and the Philadelphia Eagles. But if you remember the Bills game against the Chiefs, it was a very high-scoring affair, one of the most exciting games you've seen in quite some time. And everybody knew once the Kansas City Chiefs won the toss, the game was probably over. Neither team could stop one another, and a lot of people looked at it and said, well, that's not really fair that the Bills didn't get an opportunity to match them. And I kind of agree with that. And I said it today on Twitter, and I recognize the rules are completely different. But in baseball, if a team in extra innings gives up a run, they get an opportunity to match it. In basketball, you get an opportunity on offense. There's a 5-minute quarter, right? In football, with the old rule, you don't get an opportunity to get the ball. So I personally think this is an improvement to the rule. However, I still see some deficiencies in it, and you're never going to have a perfect rule. People are always going to complain when their season's on the line in the playoffs. The one thing I don't like here, for starters, is the fact that it's not in the regular season. I don't like when there's rules that are different between regular season and postseason. We've seen that in baseball. We've seen that in hockey with the shootouts. Of course, you don't have that in the NHL playoffs. Well, the NFL regular season will keep the old overtime rule. This will only be in the postseason. So I don't like that. I like consistency. The other thing, and I was thinking about this, to me, this gives a significant advantage potentially to the team that receives the ball second in overtime because they know what they have to do. So they effectively have four downs to get a first down because you're obviously going for it if you give up a touchdown, and you have the ability to end the game with a 2-point conversion. What I would like to see change, maybe the NFL will do this, is just take away extra points. Just make it so they have to go for 2, because if you score first, score a touchdown, and kick the extra point, you can lose if the team scores and then goes for 2 and converts it. And if I was the team with the second possession, had the opposition scored a touchdown, that is what I would do. I would look at it like this. There's probably a higher probability that I will convert that 2-point conversion than be able to hold the team to under 35 yards in a game-winning field goal that I just gave up a touchdown to on the first drive. So I think long-term, that's maybe something they should amend, but that's just my take on the situation. Overall, I personally think it is an improvement. I think it makes it a little bit more fair, which really should be the objective. I've seen a lot of people oppose it and say, well, if you can't stop on defense, you shouldn't win the football game, which is a fair opinion. I'm not discrediting anybody for that opinion, but I could just as easily say, well, the other team should have to prove that they could stop them on defense. I think both teams should get an opportunity to score. I think it's an improvement on the rule, but I still think there's going to be a lot of complaints from NFL fans around the league, and I don't like that there's a difference between regular season and postseason. As far as the Giants goes, good news about Daniel Jones. It sounds like the New York Giants are not looking to trade Saquon Barkley, but at the same time, I could just look at it that they're not looking to lose leverage. They're trying to potentially get as much as they possibly can for Barkley if, in fact, a trade does come around that blows them away. I don't expect it before the year starts. Martinez, we'll see if he's ready to go at the start of the year along with Shepard. And Peppers, best of luck to him. Never thought he was coming back because we don't have any money to spend. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.